Welcome back to part 2 of relationships. In part 1, we talked about how do I know if I'm ready to date, and we gave you some tips on that. Part 2, we're going to talk about actually what it looks like to be in a relationship and how to move forward in that.
Yeah, we like to talk about the trust ladder. So I'm going to kind of explain this analogy. When we're thinking about dating relationships, this is something that Jason introduced even in our own personal dating relationship.
Right.
It gave us some really great guidelines for how to move forward as we progress through our relationship. And it's this analogy of a ladder. So I'm going to give you a little word picture here. Picture a ladder, the rungs on the ladder, like maybe the ladder is set up against a building, it's going vertically. We'd say that when you're beginning a relationship, you start at the bottom of the ladder, you're on the first rung,
Right.
and you're asking yourself, can we be friends? Is this somebody that I'm even interested in? From there, and we'll kind of articulate it a little bit more in detail in a bit, but from there, you're climbing the ladder and you're asking different questions on each rung of the ladder. And if you get to a place where you can answer each question as you progress through, then you're actually growing in your relationship, which means as you move up the trust ladder of relationship, you're growing in trust,
Right.
but you're also continuing to grow in connection, commitment, and intimacy as well. So we would
true.
say the bottom rung is, can we be friends? The very top is, are we going to get married? And you really shouldn't skip any steps in between, because there's some really important trust, connection, and intimacy levels to grow in as you progress.
Yeah. And it's important to really understand that the bottom one, can we be friends? When you answer that correctly, it makes room for us to actually build trust.
Yep,
And
absolutely.
so when we skip a step, automatically, when you skip a step, you have lots of anxiety. So you can tell right away that you're in trouble in a relationship when you have anxiety because you haven't answered the question that you're supposed to be answering.
Right, right.
So-
So maybe next, after you've answered the question, can we be friends? Yes, absolutely. I want to date this person. I really like them. We enjoy being together. Then the next question maybe is, are they safe? Have they worked through their past relationships? Are they
Right.
bringing safe boundaries into the relationship? Do
Right.
they know how to protect my boundaries? Those are great questions to ask next. And then maybe from there you progress to, do we think the same things are fun? Do we have a good time together? Do we actually enjoy each other's company? Things like that.
Yeah, it's true. How do you know when to move up?
Yeah.
That's a question that we get all the time. And or how do I know when to move down? Or how do we know when to stay, where to stay? So
Yeah.
we're going to talk through that really quick. You move forward in a relationship when you can answer the question, yes, I can have fun with you. Or yes, you actually have boundaries and you have needs, and I have boundaries and I have needs, and there's mutual respect. So every time you answer a question successfully and the trust is built, now we can take a step forward. But when you get to a place, for instance, a lot of times we get to core values. So on the ladder, you get to a place where we're talking about our core values and we find out like, well, they don't actually add up all the way.
Yep.
That's a place where you want to stay
Yep.
until you finally figure out what you're going to do with those. So maybe you don't go up or down. You pause right there, and so your intimacy level is going to stay right there.
Right.
You're not going to pretend like you're further than you really are. And the cool thing about that is you can stay on a rung of the ladder for a while and be really honest about it and work it out. So work it out with your pastor or your friends, or together you can go see somebody and say, you know, this is where we're stuck, whether it's core values or whether it's boundaries. A lot of people get stuck with boundaries on that level and they don't know what to do.
Yeah.
They want to move forward with somebody, but they're not sure.
Absolutely. Yeah, just to kind of bring it back to the analogy, I think we said this, but I feel like it is just it'd be good to just really get this into your head, is that you don't want to move further in your intimacy or your commitment than you are in trust.
Yeah.
So the whole point is to grow in your trust, because that's really the foundation of your relationship. If you have a solid trust foundation,
That's right.
you can pile on higher levels of intimacy. You can
Right.
pile on deeper connection emotionally and physically. You really can't withstand a ton of intimacy or connection if you don't have a solid foundation of trust. So one of the questions we get asked a lot is like, well, what are all the questions? And the truth is that's different for every relationship. Every
Yeah.
relationship is really unique. Obviously, there's certain things that every dating relationship would want to have intact before you start thinking about marriage. Do we share similar core values? Can we have a good time together? Is this person safe?
Right.
All of those. But really the point is you start with questions that are low stakes, low intimacy questions, and as you move up and progress through the relationship, you're asking questions that are more intimate. You're asking questions that are more,
Like, is God in their God spot?
yeah,
Are we going towards the same place in life?
right. Do
Things
I
like
want to
that.
be a missionary in China while he wants to be a businessman in New York City? Okay, we need to figure that out if we don't know the answer to that question. So, one of the things that we like to say when we're talking about building trust in the relationship is the fact that trust is not necessarily built in the absence of making mistakes. It's built by how you clean up a mess. So if you find yourself dating someone and you have actually moved further in a relationship than you have trust, that's okay. It's no problem. You just have to know how to clean that up.
Right. And trust is also built through repeated success. So you're going to want to make sure that you actually take time to ask the right questions. I always say it like this, like the guy opens the door emotionally for the woman, asks questions, and then, together you guys move forward.
Yeah.
So, I realized in our relationship when we were dating, I realized that I was actually further along than you were.
Yeah.
And obviously that creates some sense of anxiety because I want you to be where I'm at.
Right.
And the hard thing about that is if I'm not careful, I will intentionally try and get you to where I'm at
Right.
with using my emotions or sometimes even wanting to
Yeah.
manipulate you to get to where I'm at.
Yeah, insecurity in relationship often causes people to try to push their relationship further than
It's
you
true.
really have room for.
So I just made like a commitment to myself that if I felt insecure, I wasn't going to allow my emotion to push us further and violate the trust that we have.
Right.
So there are lots of times when I'd have to stay, I remember one specific time we had planned to do breakfast or something like that, and I literally had to postpone our date for like 3 hours because I had to stay in bed and try and get rid of this insecurity. I was reading my Bible, I was, forget the Bible, that wasn't working. I was talking to God, that wasn't working. I was journaling until finally, I just worked it out. But I knew that I had to hear God's voice on it, not try and feel secure from you.
Yeah, yeah.
And so, we want to make sure that as you're going through these rungs of the ladder, where you feel insecurity, stop.
Yeah, yeah.
Get security, and then move forward.
That's really good. I think it's super important that if you're in a dating relationship, whether you've been in it for a while or this is new and fresh, one of the most important things is that you just get input. Basically, this whole topic of the trust ladder is all about creating a plan for yourself so that you don't blow through your own boundaries and create a bunch of mess with the person you're trying to build trust with. So if this is you, get some input from the people that you trust around you that have great marriages or great relationships. And really just kind of write down a bit of a plan for yourself of how am I going to navigate building trust with someone before I create intimacy or commitment with them. So yeah, one of our favorite topics. We love talking about dating. Hopefully this was helpful for you. And yeah, we'll see you next time.